technically we're supposed to start at 6, but I want to do a little bit of chatting about why I'm having this conversation. So I'm sure you all know. Um, I know, I love it. I love that it shows it now. Um, so if you are on Twitter or you are involved in social media for transgender activism, for transgender rights, then you probably know. I don't know how to say it. I think it's Kefals. I think that's how you say it. She is a prominent transgender activist. I believe she's like Italian. She's of course a white trans woman. Um, Really prominent activist, has raised a lot of money. Was recently verified on Twitter for the work that she's done. Oh, thank you so much, Otome Shima, for the $3. I really appreciate it. Hey, Mick. Um, yeah, very prominent transgender activist, right? Well, she has a very extensive history of uh, anti-black, anti-brown racism. I'm doing pretty well, Mick. How are you doing? So she has an extensive history of regularly using her social media to kind of target people who come out against her. Yes, we are. Who come out against her, and anyone who says anything negative about Kefals, I'm not sure how to pronounce it. I'll say Kefals. Anyone who says anything negative about her usually gets harassed pretty extensively for an extended period of time, to the point where most of them end up leaving social media. Um, and so, um, yeah, so that is kind of what led to this conversation. Kefals has recently been working to take down kiwi farms, which, if you are a minor, please do not look up kiwi farms. It's a very prominent anti-trans, really just like alt-right hate site. They work to actively, dox and harass and threaten creators that they choose to target for whatever reason. Most of the time, they tend to be trans. A lot of times, they tend to be trans people of color. And so, Kefals has been doing work to take down kiwi farms. Well, a lot of people brought up the fact that, yes, she's doing all this amazing work to take down kiwi farms, but it would be nice if we highlighted an activist who was doing this work and also not racist, basically. And a lot of people were upset that people were making these comments. Um, they were saying, there was one person in particular who was a Jewish person. Keep in mind that Kiwi Farms has a lot of Nazi imagery and stuff like that, and Nazi connections. A Jewish person commented, a trans Jewish person commented, basically saying, we should not. I will temporarily side with a racist person if it means taking down Nazis. And that is kind of what prompted me to have this discussion today, because I want to let y'all know that if you have that mindset, one, get the heck out of my community right now. Get out of my community. You're not welcome here. I don't want anything to do with you. Go away. That is the first thing I'm gonna say. The second thing I'm gonna say is that is the most backwards, anti-black, hyper racist bullcrap that you could ever say to a black person in particular, specifically a trans black person. Like, I don't want to hear nothing about, oh, well, yeah, they're racist, but they're doing this. I can guarantee you there are individuals who are doing the same thing and not racist. Just because we're not as popular, just because we're not, a lot of black trans activists are hyper criticized, um, reduced in what we say. We have what we say stolen and reposted by white activists. Just because that's the case, like, doesn't mean that we're not doing the work. Like, there's so many of us out here actively doing the work, actively raising money. So many trans people of color actively working to increase trans rights. So to sit here and say, I will side with this person who is racist and has targeted black trans people because they are taking down Kiwi farms or they are taking down Nazis. To say things like that is not okay. And I don't know how else to get people to understand this. I don't know how else to help people understand that there is intersectionality within every single community, but that is the purpose of today's conversation. To have a conversation about how can we actually be intersectional? How can we increase the intersectionality in the transgender community? Because a lot of non-black trans people in particular, hold up anti-black racism, and a lot of white trans people uphold white supremacy. And that is why we are having this conversation today. And honestly, it's not even something that's just limited to the trans community. The queer community in general tends to do things like this. And to kind of get slightly off topic, with the Queen's passing yesterday, a lot of verified white gay creators were coming out and saying, Black Twitter this, Black Twitter that, Black Twitter, why are you doing this? Black Twitter, why are you doing that? And actively targeting black queer people for their comments saying that they were happy that the Queen died. And I'm not really understanding why Black Twitter was singled out when it wasn't just Black Twitter saying anything, but very often Black people's comments and commentary on anti-Black racism and colonization are reduced to anger or reduced to aggression or reduced to just like these really negative terms. And it's just very strange to me. Black people are always called out before anyone. Black people are also held to a very different standard than non-black activists. Like, to continue kind of on this tangent, I remember when the information first started to come out about the anti-trans and like reduction in reproductive rights started to come out. A lot of black activists were targeted by members of the trans community for not saying things like reproductive rights. They were saying women's rights, or saying like this harms women instead of this harms people with uteruses. And I feel like okay, I get your point, right? Inclusive language, whatever, but you have to recognize the historical context of how people of color attach to these labels, like woman, attached to things like trans, non-binary. Like, there's historical context to all of these things. So to reduce it to, oh, you should use inclusive language, even though a white person in particular saying this, oh yeah, I historically stripped you of your womanhood, told you that you weren't a real woman, defeminized you because I felt like you didn't uphold white womanhood. But now I'm gonna tell you that you can't say women's rights, that you can't say womanhood, that you have to use inclusive language. And as a trans person who does not identify as a woman but is very much black, I do not agree with that take. And there's just so many different things that point to the fact that, in general, people do not respect or appreciate black activism.
We stay in different time zones. We stay in different time zones.
And that is exactly the case, Sunberry. Like, and it's always been
We
a
stay
thing.
in
And
different
whenever I have
time
conversations
zones.
like this, people are like, oh, well, why do black people get to be held to a different standard? Like, blah, 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 blah. That's, transphobic and all of this stuff. And it's just like, it's not about holding black people to a different standard. It's about recognizing and contextualizing what people are saying. It's called nuance. Like, for once in the history of Twitter, I would like to see there be some more nuance in the conversations that we have around activism, especially around gender and sexuality. Like, it's so stinky being trans, queer, black, and I don't even get the worst of it because I'm a light skinned black person. I can't even imagine or begin to grasp exactly what my darker skin counterparts are going through. And on top of that, I'm a non-woman. So being trans and being non-binary gives me a lot more privilege than my trans binary, particularly trans woman counterparts. And then adding on if they're dark skinned, adding on if they're taller, adding on if, their hair is kinkier, adding on if they're not conventionally attractive. Like, they are going to be more targeted, and they are going to be more hyper criticized by this community. And that freaking sucks. And like, the fact that I'm always the one having these conversations, like, yeah, I'm glad I get to, use my platform for something to really fight against marginalization that directly affects me and directly affects my friends. Yes, I'm glad about that. But when the hell are non-black people going to take time to have these conversations and invite black people onto their platform so that the word can actually get out? Because I'm looking right now, and I'm not saying 26 viewers I have my viewer count on, by the way. I'm not saying 26 viewers is not a lot, but if I were white, talking about being trans and being marginalized as a trans person, as like a white person, I can guarantee you white trans activists have it a lot easier than black trans activists. I can guarantee you that. And it's like, I'm always having these conversations. I'm always, having these forums and having these panels and having these discussions, and it feels very stinky sometimes that it's not taken as seriously as when a white person hops on their platform and just starts talking about, like, their experiences as a trans person, which really is just their experience. Like, the fact that I even have to specify my experiences as a trans black person highlights the fact that there is a lack of intersectionality, a lack of nuance in the conversations that we have around anti trans violence. Because I have to specify the black trans experience because the white trans experience is considered the default.
Melty
And
cannon.
that sucks. Absolutely, it is. Watching my friends struggle to crowdfund, watching my friends struggle to get traction on what they're saying, like, it sucks. It sucks a lot. It's not even that just they feel that it's the default experience, but even people outside of the community. will highlight the white trans experience. And to kind of circle back to the whole kefal situation, the number of white people I saw agreeing that the progressive trans flag is silly is actually disgusting. If you don't know what the progressive trans flag is, there's two different ones. There's the one that added the brown and black stripes, and then there's the one that added the yellow with the purple circle for intersex people. And so Kefal's made a tweet basically saying that, like, oh, there's no point in having the progressive trans flag because that implies that the original, I mean, sorry, not progressive trans flag, progressive pride flag. There's no point in having the progressive pride flag because it implies that the pride flag never included black and brown people. And it's the same thing with, like, POC. It's the same pushback that was received when BIPOC as a term was introduced, and POC felt like, oh, well, we're all POC. So why should it matter if, we highlight black and indigenous people as separate from POC? It shouldn't make a difference. It's the same really dense mentality that you're failing to recognize that we have to uplift and highlight marginalized people in this way. The black and brown stripes are there because black and brown trans people, black and brown queer people are marginalized more than anyone else. That is why it's there. The same way, the reason why the B and I in BIPOC is there to force you to recognize that black and indigenous people have a uniquely racialized experience, even within communities of color. Every community of color has an anti-black slur. Every single one. And that alone indicates that there's a need to uplift black and brown people. Sorry, let me catch up on chat. Thank you, Zoo, for the lyric. I appreciate it. Not on Stardew. We're not talking about that, Lorenzo. Let me catch up on chat. Hey, Amy. Thank you for the quiet hello. It is very frustrating to have to always justify our existence within certain communities. It's very frustrating. And at what point do privileged people recognize that they have privilege? Like, why? And this kind of brings me to another point. I would really like, I'm not going to talk too much about the Disabled Content Creators Collective applications. They are open for anyone who's interested. But I'm letting you know right now, if your bio, if you are a white person, oh, hey Panda. If you are a white person and your bio says autistic, neurodivergent, trans, blah blah, and it lists every marginalization but you ain't got nothing in your bio about you being white, I'm side-eyeing you. That is a yellow flag for me. That is absolutely a yellow flag for me. Hey, Yasmin. Because this is why white people only be talking about their marginalizations, because we've normalized it so much. Why are you so comfortable telling me every single way that you're marginalized, but fail to recognize every single way that you're privileged? Why can't you say you're white? Y'all be having these, like, light skinned, not fair skinned, light skinned VTubers, PNG tubers, Kid Crews, and won't say that you're white. Why? Answer. If you are one of these people, I want to know. Hey Irene, I hope you're doing well. I want to know if you are if you're the person I'm talking about. Answer. I want to know. I want to know. Welcome back, Taro. Thank you so much for the gifted sub. Thank you so much, Mick. I really appreciate it. We were just I basically just was doing a little bit of exposition on as to why we are it was Mick who gifted it to you. We were just doing some exposition as to why we are even having this conversation in the first place. Hey Benjay, how are you? I know some of you in chat. I know some of you in chat are the people I'm talking about. So I'ma wait. I want one of y'all to answer. Why are y'all scared to say you're white? Hey Robbie. I will go through my viewers right now. And I know one of y'all is who I'm talking about. I know. I want to know. Shut up, Robbie. Alright, if y'all don't wanna show yourselves. Nah, I'm not gonna call y'all out, but think about what I'm saying right now. Think about it. Think about it. Think about why you are so quick to say that you're disabled, neurodivergent, trans, queer, whatever. Think about why you're so quick to say that, but you can't say that you're white. Well, think about why you infiltrate spaces without any inclination that you are white. Think about why you infiltrate spaces that don't involve ethnic and racial identities. Think about why you enter these spaces ready to give your opinions on all of these different things without saying you're white. Think about it. Really think about it. Yes, you can say something, but I think it's also important to recognize that, like, Yeah, you can say something. I just don't want it to become like where everyone's voicing their opinions about what I'm saying, because nothing I say is up for debate. Nothing I say in this space is up for debate because I'm talking about my experience. So I want to make that clear. Oh, thank you, Robbie. Why is my alert box alert so low? Thank you, Robbie, for the 10 months. I appreciate it. So this is, I guess, technically an AMA. If anyone has any questions, if anyone's looking for like resources or anything like that, I do have a couple. But if you have questions, then you're definitely welcome to ask using the channel points redemption and stuff like that. Yeah, I think if you're like, if you have your profile picture there, if you're voicing that you're white, I'm not saying like you have to. Oh, thank you, Mick, for the for the gifted sub to the Rat Pack. I appreciate it. Yes, and I would love to like, I would love for one of my Asian pals to have a conversation about that so I can highlight it. I am mixed Asian, but I don't feel personally comfortable taking on that topic myself. I would rather highlight Asian content creators who can discuss this in a way that, because I don't really have any attachment to my Asian heritage, but I would love to highlight some Asian content creators talking about these things. But yeah, I think that like if you're not like listing all of your identities, like if you're not listing all of your identities in your bio, I'm not saying you gotta put in there that you're white. You know what I'm saying? I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if you have a tendency to inject yourself into all of these conversations, to put it as a part of your identity that yes, I'm neurodivergent, I'm disabled, I'm queer, I'm trans, you know, if you have it, if you have the energy and you take the time to do that, then I think that equally you should be identifying yourself as white. Because if you enter this space, and I'm having a conversation about anti-black racism in the trans community, and you give your topic and have never indicated that you are white, or you give your opinion and have never indicated that you're white, I'm looking at you funny, because why are you giving your opinion? I don't even know, I don't even know where that's coming from. I don't know if your opinion is coming from the fact that you are seeing this, that you experience it. I don't know where it's coming from. So how can I even like actually have a conversation with you if you have a tendency to only highlight your marginalized identities? Y'all will see me say all the time, I'm a light-skinned black person. I have so much privilege in that. I have so much privilege in being a light-skinned black person speaking on these things, because nobody is going to sit here and comparatively, relative to my darker skinned counterparts, Nobody's gonna sit here and call me aggressive as quick as they're gonna call my dark skinned counterpart aggressive. No one is going to, you know, hypersexualize me the same way. No one is going to masculinize me the same way. I'm a light skinned person. Y'all hear me say that all the time. Even I take time to do that in these spaces. So why do you, as a white person, or really a non-black person, if you're entering spaces that are talking about the black experience, why do you feel comfortable only highlighting your marginalized identities? Thank you. It's the sun. The sun's like right there. And I have my window open. Not y'all gassing me. Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I hope your chores go well. Yeah, I think there's... Alright, Sunberry, take care. I hope your dinner goes well. Be sure to decompress this weekend if you can. I think there's a lot more ways that we can learn to recognize our marginalized and privileged identities. If you missed the chat last time, please. I love being a simp. Non-derogatory, Twitch. Don't try and get me about it here. If you missed our conversation last time, we talked about the addressing framework by Pamela Hayes. And the addressing framework is a wonderful way to start to work to capture all of yourself. Be able to capture your marginalized and privileged identities. Every single person who is watching this stream in the future, every single person who is here while it's live, every single person in this chat is privileged in some way. And if you cannot recognize that, then you do not belong in my community. If you refuse to try to recognize that, you do not belong in my community. Every single one of us here is privileged in some way. Let me see if I can find... This one's a little bit more in depth. I'm not sure if it has screen reader access. I don't have a screen reader. I don't have screen reader software, so I wouldn't be able to check. But this is a more in-depth version of the addressing framework. Oh, thank you, Sunberry, for the $10. I appreciate it. So this is the Hayes addressing framework. So this is a little bit more in depth. Definitely recommend, if you've never done this before, I would definitely recommend trying to do this. I would definitely recommend trying to do this. Yeah, I mean, I talk all the time about, like, there's a lot of times where thank you for the hydrate. I still haven't finished this water. Don't judge me, y'all. I'm sorry. I haven't even, up until today, I haven't even really been home.
I stay living, stay open, stay wide, stay free.
But yeah, I talk all the time about, like, the privilege that I have as a trans non-binary person. If I wanted to go out and say, like, yeah, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm a cis woman, no one would question me. No one would question me. And obviously there's more nuance to the conversation of, like, the point of the addressing framework is to learn to really distinctly identify ways that you would be privileged and ways that you would be marginalized. And obviously there's intersectionality over those identities, and I want to highlight that as well. But still, you're still privileged. Oh, nice. Thank you, Bubsy Web, for the host. I appreciate it. I did hydrate. I did. I drank water. Thank you so much, Irene, for the host. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're a little bit past the mark on when I'm supposed to start talking about the subject and stuff. If you guys are confused, the conversation today is about in community marginalization and white supremacy in the transgender community. And we are having this. Thank you for hydrate again. Not the double hydrate. Let me move my mic or mute myself so you guys can't hear me. Thank you so much, Noob, for the host. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Please. So yeah, we're having a conversation about in-community marginalization and white supremacy, particularly in the trans community. And we are having this conversation because of a comment that was made around, basically, a black woman stated, oh, thank you so much for the subscription, I appreciate it. A black woman stated that she felt uncomfortable with the conversation around Kefals and the support that Kefals was receiving, given how racist Kefals has been in the past. And someone who is trans, Jewish, but white basically said that word for word, I would temporarily side with a racist person if it meant taking down Nazis. And they have since deleted that tweet, but when I responded, I said, I want to know, why you even thought it was appropriate to comment on a black person's post and say that you would side with racists for the sake of self-preservation. I want to know why you would even think that would be appropriate. Hey, Madison. And so they commented back saying that right now, Nazis are the greatest threat to black people. Now, are Nazis a threat to black people? Absolutely. Like, that, it would be silly for me to say that they're not. But are Nazis the greatest threat to white people or to black people? First of all, who are you to tell me what's the greatest threat to me as a black person? Let's start there. Like, who do you think you are? Secondly, it's not Nazism itself that is the threat to black people. It is the white supremacy ingrained in being a Nazi that is the harm to black people. The ultimate harm is the white supremacy. Like, And I'm the same way, Mick. Like, I don't care if you spent your whole life dedicated to black and brown people. If you were racist, then you were racist, and you deserve to be held accountable for that. Who are you? Who is anyone to tell black people or people of color that they cannot hold someone accountable for being racist? Like, I don't care. In what world do I owe you any type of forgiveness? In what world do I owe you, support or anything? I don't have to uplift you. You weren't thinking about me when you were over here spouting anti-black racism. Thank you, Zephy, for the host. It's starting to storm. I'm hoping my internet doesn't go out. But yeah, so that's basically what happened. Again, they deleted their tweets. They said that they understand why they were wrong. They ended up blocking me, but they did say that that's why they understand why they're wrong. And when we to be truly invested in pro-trans work means being against white supremacy. Like, you cannot be for white supremacy and actually be truly invested in trans activism. To participate, thank you Zoo for the host. To participate in transgender activism, all encompassing. Thank you, Mick, for the host. Thank you, Small Wild Child, for the follow. To be truly invested and capture all that is embedded in trans activism, you are actively working against white supremacy, because a lot of what white supremacy does, especially in the modern day, especially through social media, is target trans people. So they are supposed to fight each other. If you're doing trans activism, your work as a trans activist should directly counter white supremacy. And so if you're sitting here and saying things like, I can excuse racism for the sake of trans activism, no, you can't. You cannot. Because ultimately you are assisting the side. Like, all white supremacy has an anti-trans component. So if you're saying you can accept racism, then you're assisting white supremacy and therefore contributing to further marginalization of trans people. Like, that's how it's always been. White supremacy and transphobia have always been connected. And there are years and years of research that show this. But the problem is that a lot of white people have never been challenged on this. A lot of white people have never been challenged on their lack of intersectionality. And we've seen it recently on Twitch. Like, everyone's getting called out for their lack of intersectionality lately. It just seems so silly to me that that's even a statement that can be made by white people. Like, it really blows my mind. It really, truly blows my mind. As a black trans person, as a trans person in general, like, how can you sit here and say it? You shouldn't even have to be, like, challenged in real life. Pick up a freaking book. Pick up a book. Like, you have all this access to the internet. You have all this access to academia. Pick up a freaking book. And like, speaking of books, pick up queer communities of colors books. Do not limit yourself to whatever these white activists are saying. If you really, really want to contribute to intersectionality, you cannot limit yourself to books that are written by white people only, because you're not going to capture the full story. And it just really blows me that we can sit here all the time and talk about how black people, we comment on Stonewall, and we comment on how black people started the LGBTQ plus rights movement and all of this stuff. We can say this all the time. But white people will limit themselves to white centered spaces, listen to white activists, and read white books. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? And it's like, I'm starting to get mad just thinking about it, because like, and I do get mad a lot of the times. I do get mad a lot of the times because like, people just don't listen. And I want people to listen. And I don't want people to just listen to me. I want people to listen to all black people. Like, welcome in, Haunted by Halos. Thank you so much for the raid. I appreciate it. I want people to do just more work to listen to intersectionally marginalized individuals. And I don't know how else to like get people to do it. Honestly, I think a lot of it has to do with laziness. Laziness and pride. Which is wild, because how are you lazy and proud? Like, that blows me for real, because how are you so lazy, and how are you so lazy that you don't want to do the research yourself, but then when people present you with the research to tell you to open your eyes and be, you know, more intersectional and be more considerate and more nuanced in your takes, that when people do that, you're so proud that you won't even accept it. And that's the issue with Kefals. That's one of the people that be doing that. You are so lazy that you don't want to put in the work to accept intersectionality, to uplift and uphold intersectionality in the trans community. But when people tell you, hey, you did something wrong, then you want to comment ratio on their stuff, or you want to say that, like, the worst thing Kefals did leading up to this Kiwi Farm situation is make that really ignorant post saying that anyone who challenged Kefals was a spy or a plant by Kiwi Farms to reduce her like validity as a person speaking out against them. Why would you do that? Like, why would you even need to do that? I still don't understand that. I still don't understand that. I still don't understand why she did that. And like, I've asked the people who come into my mentions saying that they support her, like, why do you think she did that, and how do you think that impacts how we hold her accountable for the negative things that she's done? And no one has an answer. But like, okay, Hot take. But has she actually done anything for the trans community?
Baby, you don't understand just what you mean to me. I know it's something beautiful, like waves out in the sea. I just want you next to me. I just want you next to me.
Like I feel like educating people and providing resources is a valuable part of activism. Like that's what I do here and stuff like that, and I'm not trying just to discredit that as a valuable part of activism, but is that actually doing enough to become the head or the figurehead of trans online activism? Like, is that actually enough? What are you actually doing? Like, and I don't care. I 100% do not care about charity work. I think that we should put less emphasis on charity work and more emphasis on crowdfunding, because this charity work, like, there are so many limitations and limiting factors to being able to get funds from charities. So I want to know, like, why we put so much emphasis on charity work when we've recognized for a long time that nonprofit organizations are part of the capitalist system. So I don't really understand why, you know, why we always pretend that doing charity work is like the most valuable thing that you can do as an activist. I don't understand that. If we recognize that systems are in place that further marginalize people of color, then we would also recognize that those systems are present in things like access to charity funds, no? Thank you, Mick. Honestly, like, if y'all see, I get, I meet my $1,000 goal and half of it doesn't even go to me. Because I recognize that in being able to articulate myself in a lot of these spaces and being able to advocate in a lot of these spaces, I have privilege to do that. And in turn, I turn those funds to other people of color, other people who also need help. But this woman got over $100,000, and exactly, Quirky, and that's what I'm saying. So why do we put this huge, like, that's whenever I ask what has Kefals done and what have other transgender activists done, that is what people say. They're like, oh, well, she raised so much money for charity. And that's great. I'm not saying charity work is not valuable. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that if we recognize that there's marginalization in place in every single system that we've created, and nonprofits are a part of the capitalist system, they are, then why do we put so much value on charity instead of mutual aid, like, funding? Exactly. Exactly, Mick. So I want to know, what has she actually done? Like, I'm looking. I'm trying to understand how any of this is enough to excuse racism. Like, I'm looking at everything, I'm looking at her Wikipedia article. I'm looking and I'm trying to see how any of this could even excuse racism. Like, I'm looking and I don't see it. But you know, the sucky thing is that it's not even just white people excusing this, it's other people of color as well.
Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, who do you choose? I might have to do my research, oh, moody blues. It's gonna be hard to pick one, cause there's many views. We gon' bite the dust, and my shooters, they gon' shoot. And my hoopers, they gon' hoop, yeah, like they supposed to. I'm pulling up with one black and one white, that's old school. I remember back when I was a lame.
And I know that in the black trans community there were already discussions about how to take down these really hateful sites and stuff, but again, the black people, the black activists doing this work were completely ignored in what they were doing because they're black. So it's like, when do we start to recognize that the people who are doing so much for the communities that we're a part of are able to do that because of privilege? When do we recognize that? That's my other question. Because people actively ignore activists of color who are doing the same thing, who have these campaigns. They get ignored. Anyway, I don't want this to turn into like a whole conversation about that, about, you know, kefals in general, but thank you, small wild child. I appreciate it. But I don't want this to turn into a whole conversation about her. I want to focus on now. Take your time, Mick. I want to focus a little bit on what we can do to reduce the impact of white supremacy in the transgender space. There are a lot of transgender activists, and I'm working to put together a list. It's a little bit difficult right now with work and stuff, but there are a lot of transgender activists who are out here doing the same stuff, doing the hard work, and I want to take time to highlight them. And I think that in highlighting those individuals, we would probably do better to decrease the very white face of trans activism. Yeah, and Jules, I want to highlight what you just said, because there are some times where I literally have to throw in the towel, and this is not even just for this topic, but in general. There have been times where a lot of my white mutuals have taken exactly what I said and tweeted it out. And sometimes I really have to throw in the towel, because I'm like, man, like, I would love to get credit for what I'm saying. I would love to get credit for the education I that I provided to this person that even allowed them to have this take in the first place, I would love some freaking credit for that. But at the same time, like, I recognize that a lot of a lot more people will see it if it comes from a white person. And it sucks a lot because, like, not even just white people, but like, there will be other people of color who have stolen what I've said. That has stolen what I said and tweeted it out and summarized what I've said and gotten more attention because they're not black. And it's part of why, if you follow me on Twitter, like, if you are a white person and you comment on my takes agreeing, or you comment on my takes, like, you quote it saying whatever, a lot of times I won't even like it or respond, because I don't want to create this mindset that I have to be validated by non-black people to have my opinion and my voice taken seriously. I don't want to contribute to that ideology. I don't. So it would be nice if more, like, for instance, I'm speaking about this now, right? All of my input has come from lived experience. I'm not taking this from no one else. I'm not I do my own research, whatever, right? I'm doing this all on my own. If someone decides to, like, summarize what I've put out today, what I've discussed today, and doesn't give me credit, that is actively contributing to marginalization. Actively contributing to the marginalization of my voice as a black person in this community. But sometimes I would rather they not even quote it. Like, for real, I would rather, because again, when y'all quote stuff and you say, wow, I agree, right? Why do you have to agree with me? Why do you as a non-black person have to agree with my black take for it to be taken seriously by non-black people? Why do you have to agree? Or, like, when I have these conversations and people say, like, that they would want to have these conversations, or that they want to do the same thing that I'm doing, but they're not black, it makes me uncomfortable. Because why, again, do I have to be validated by a non-black person who says that they would do the same thing that I'm doing? And welcome back, Mick. So I think part of it would be if people did more to directly highlight voices instead of taking talking points from marginalized communities. I think that would be very helpful. I think another thing that would be helpful is if white people just did not give their opinion on certain things in general. Like, if you're saying, like, if you retweet someone's tweet where they're talking about, racism and stuff like that, then I feel like that's enough. But why do you have to give your input into things that don't even affect you? Hey, Iwa. Well, I'm not saying like. What I'm saying is when. Thank you, Glovio, for the host. What I'm talking about is when people quote my tweets to say, yes, I agree. That's what I'm talking about. If you're quoting my tweets, like this is me speaking for myself. If you're quoting my tweets and you're saying something along the lines of, this really helped me, or, you know, I'm really looking forward to this conversation, that's a little bit different. Yeah, I'm trying to finish my gallon. That's a little bit different than saying, like, quoting my tweet and saying I agree. And what I don't want is people quoting my tweets and saying, like, I agree with this take. I don't care. Like, if you don't share the same identities as me, then I would rather you not quote my tweets saying like you agree, because that presents that to me, for me, that says Chi-Chi's opinion is only valuable because a person who is not marginalized the same way as them agrees with them. Does that make sense? And obviously there's some other people who are fine with that, but I'm saying for me, I don't like to feel like my opinions and my thoughts and my feelings are validated only when white people agree. I don't like that. It makes me really uncomfortable to feel that way. I don't. Like, if you wanna highlight what I'm saying, then I feel like a tweet, you know, is like a retweet is enough, or saying that you learned something, I feel like is okay. But like when people, it's particular, there's certain parts of language that people use. When people say like, yeah, I agree, what are you agreeing with? See, and that would be fine for me, Haunted by Halos. That would be fine for me, but saying things like, I agree with what Chi-Chi is saying, like, who are you to, why are you agreeing? What do you mean you agree? Where did I ask for your opinion? Does that make sense? I don't know how to further articulate that, but like, that, to me, that implies that you have the right to an opinion on what I'm saying in the first place. Like, why are you making a judgment on whether what I'm saying is valuable or not, or whether it's helpful or not, or whether it's like, why do you have to make those judgments? And I think that's what makes me uncomfortable, and I do feel like that contributes a lot to marginalization, because if every single take that gets boosted only gets boosted when certain people, certain identities agree with it, then that means that the people who don't have the same visibility, and the people who don't have an attachment to these certain groups, will not have their voice boosted. Hey Sheila. That's exactly what I'm saying. Like, I feel like a retweet is enough. I feel like quoting and saying like it helped you is fine for me. Again, I'm speaking only about my experiences, and there might be other people who don't even agree with what I'm saying right now, and that's fine. But I'm speaking from my experience. If I'm making like a tweet or I'm making a thread and stuff like that, and you go anything further than this helped me, and you start to give your opinions on what I'm saying, I'm looking at you funny. Because why do I need that? Did I ask for that? Did I ask if you agree? Did I ask if you experienced this? Mick, please! Thank you for the gifted sub to Sheila. I appreciate it. Thank you, thank you. But yeah. So I feel like one way would be to if we could like come together and find a way to highlight voices without like contributing to the idea that you have to be validated by white people in particular, but even like if it's a topic related to black people, I don't really know if I want non-black people doing that either. And it's really like weird. Like I feel like another like kind of hypothetical is that I know for sure if a white person was doing what I'm doing today and was discussing in community marginalization, I know for sure that they would get a lot of praise for that. Whereas for me, it's almost expected. Mick, thank you for the gifted sub to Zephy. I appreciate it. But if anyone has, I think this would be a good time to open up the topic, or open up the conversation to chat. What do you think are ways that you can highlight voices that come from people who are more marginalized from you? Like, what are your suggestions for that? If you feel comfortable sharing.
Multi-cannon.
Sorry, I'm looking at my phone. Okay, good luck. Even though I know it's gonna go well, but good luck still. Essie! I'm literally looking at it right now. I know I shouldn't be while I'm on stream, but I'm literally looking at it right now. It's just funny that you mention it. It looks really good. I shouldn't be looking at this right now. I'm not able to listen to it, of course, but... I don't know that simply loving each other is the right answer. Minrius, I don't know. I don't think that's enough. I feel like too often we throw like terminology like that around, and we throw like phrases like that around, like, oh, like just love each other, and view each other as human beings and stuff like that. Like, it's not enough to just be positive. I don't know that it's a good start either. I feel like a good start would be to be anti-racist, to be anti-hate. I feel like being anti-hate is more productive than being pro-love. Because as much as we want to pretend like being pro-love is enough, it's really not. I think that like a lot of times when we get caught up in like respecting each other and loving each other and doing all of these things, we don't, like, people define those things in a very off way when it comes to social justice. And so I just think that maybe being anti bigotry, anti hate is ultimately more productive than just loving each other. Because who deserves love? Like, if someone is being hateful, do they still deserve love? Is it fair to expect that I would have to extend love to someone who's actively contributing to my marginalization? It just seems, I don't like how that sounds. I just don't. I think that could be helpful, Bo. I don't think there's anything necessarily wrong with giving an opinion. I just think there's a certain way to do it. Minrius, I would really like you to not say some of the stuff you're saying, because it's giving me weird feelings. Like, to say just love people, like, what is that actually gonna do? It gives me the same feelings as like view each other as human beings type of talk. Because, like, that's not realistic. Be actually realistic. What is more realistic? Convincing hateful bigots to love me as a marginalized person, or thank you Tofi for the host. I appreciate it, and for the quiet hello. Like, what's actually more realistic? And I guess this is a question for all of chat. What's actually more realistic? Convincing people to love and respect me as the human being, or thank you Spidey for the host, or fighting against people who are hateful? Yeah, so then what's the solution? If the solution is not to be active, like, I don't. I'm not like, and I really appreciate your take, Minrius. I wanna make that clear. Like, I understand that the take that you have is out of the belief that we are capable of love and we are capable of kindness. Like, I get what you're saying in theory, but in practice, how does it work? Like, how does it actually work? Sorry, I'm reading something. I'm reading this thread, and like, here's another tweet from a white person, from a white trans person, and they're saying that the reason why this is so embarrassing. I'm gonna quote it and I'll just let y'all read it. Um,
I got cats, I got plans, what you want? Dream big in the city that I'm from. I just want the world to be happy or in love. But I guess that's tough, cause this world is rough and I don't know what to do.
one of these days I'm gonna have to leave Twitter because
More time in the books, cause how you supposed to learn if you don't even look? Ooh, one step, two step, yeah, you just gotta move yourself. And if you take a really bad hit, then you should probably watch your health.
one of these days I'm just gonna have to leave Twitter because some of the people on that site's takes are so dense that it actually pisses me off. Like, to kind of tie in the whole conversation about loving, like extending love and compassion to people who are bigoted and hateful and all of this stuff, and love and passion and compassion in conversations around activism, this is exactly why it's absolutely nonsensical that Kefals invited these people who were on Kiwi farms into her community, but actively works and actively blocks the voices of trans people who call her out. And a lot of activists do this. A lot of white activists in particular do this because why are you comfortable talking to bigots, talking to people who are involved in a platform that was actively targeting trans people, but black people calling you out on your racism is where you draw the line. And that's what I'm saying, Aikawi Princess. I brought that up before. I brought that up before, how people have already been, black people in particular, were already actively talking about how horrible Kiwi Farms was and got ignored. And now that this white trans woman gets on her platform and speaks out against Kiwi Farms and builds this whole campaign and continues to get money for it, all of a sudden, people want to listen. Yes, she invited people from Kiwi Farms to join her community. And this is the stuff I be talking about. This is the stuff I be talking about. When we talk about this, excuse my language, bullshit about love and grace and forgiveness, that is what it gets us. Why are you inviting people from Kiwi Farms into your community? Why? Like, I'm getting mad. Thank you for your tweet, Mick. Yeah, okay. So to give a little bit more context, let me just close Twitter. To give a little bit more context to what we're talking about, Kiwi Farms is a very popular cyberbullying and transphobic and racist site that participates in like group doxing. Basically, they dox and swat people all the time, and they do it especially to, like, lately it's been mostly like transgender people, and they've caused a lot of harm to the point where people have harmed themselves because of the relentless harassment that has come from Kiwi Farms. You saw what Aikawi Princess said about how Kiwi Farms was harassing Ferguson activists, and black activists have been talking about how harmful Kiwi Farms is for a long time. Not just black activists, but other trans people of color, especially when Kiwi Farms kind of shifted their focus to transphobia. And so Kefals created a campaign that was committed to um Kefals created a campaign that was committed to shutting down kiwi farms. And within like sometime during a conversation, Kefals basically said like anyone who wants to leave kiwi farms can come to my community. If you leave kiwi farms, if you drop kiwi farms, you are welcome in my community. Another thing Kefals does is actively platform bigots by inviting them to debates on her platform, which is also not good. And so right now we're talking about how harmful that is, because how do you platform racists and bigots and stuff like that but draw the line at criticism from black trans people? Like if you get criticized by trans people, especially trans people of color, on some of the statements that you've made, you block them. Why? But you'll invite members of kiwi farms to your community. Why? and and I want to go back to what some of the people were saying about how they think that they can contribute to uplifting black people in these spaces. East Marin says, I know online I tried to amplify voices like yours that are actively speaking out against and calling out bigotry in all its forms. Retweets, sharing posts to my Instagram story, reposting on TikTok, hosting streams, RIP to hosts, come October. My biggest hurdle has been diversifying the communities I'm currently in. Semi-Precious Jules says, I think white people need to evaluate their privileges, do the work to be anti-racist, which means reading literature by BIPOC creators and listening to BIPOC activists, really research history and have conversations with their white friends to call out their behavior. We need to listen to BIPOC and other marginalized voices. And I definitely agree with both of those things. I guess my question is, how is the best way to highlight marginalized voices without hijacking the conversation from those marginalized voices? Does that make sense? Like, how do we work? And if anyone in chat is also an activist, I'd love to hear your opinions. How do we work to highlight voices without it becoming a thing where if your voice is not highlighted by certain people, then you basically don't get any attention? How do we reduce the idea that you have to have a white person or white members of the community that you're speaking as a part of, like, agree with you to have your opinion hold any validity? How do we reduce that idea? Because my answer is, like, again, if y'all quote me, saying you agree is a no-go. Yeah. I think there's nothing wrong with saying things like, oh, this helped me, or something along those lines is fine. But I feel like if it goes beyond that, then it's a little bit iffy. I think another thing that might be helpful is if, when white people in particular are talking about these subjects, they actually invite the subjects to the, like, discussion. So, like, if you are hosting a space about, I don't know, Like, if you are white and you're hosting a space about racism in a particular community, then you should 100% have BIPOC creators on this discussion. I think even like, I feel like you shouldn't talk about things like that on your own. Like, I don't even think that you should talk about, I don't really think that you should talk about things that do not affect you on your own. Especially if you're like monetizing that content. Because if none of the money is going to the people that, because you've basically in some ways almost commodified their experience and monetized their experience. I think the way to do that is to actively seek out people who already do it. Like I said several times, I've named myself as a resource for people. So when people DM me and reach out to me like, "Hey Chi, can you give me advice on how to diversify my space?" That's not tokenizing, because I've said that I want to do that. Like, so finding people that have said that they want to do that, I think is a start. Looking up and researching activists and then reaching out to them and saying things like, "Hey, I would really like to highlight your voice on my platform and have a discussion in a way that doesn't center my voice as a white person. Would you be interested in me hosting a space?" And make sure that you give them whatever money that you make from hosting that space. Thank you, Mick, please. I don't think I'm an expert, but I appreciate it. I've been getting a lot of DMs lately about people who want to diversify their space without tokenizing people, and I want to know what y'all's definition of tokenizing people actually is. And I don't want to put anyone on the spot, but like, when y'all say tokenizing, that has specific implications. So if you're doing it and coming from the right place, and you're coming from a good place and a good spirit, then why do so many of y'all think that you're going to be perceived as tokenizing people? I guess, yeah, I want to know why that is. Because almost everyone who's DM'd me about advice for diversifying their space and getting more like diverse leadership has said that they're worried about tokenizing. And I'm just like, but if people are applying to your space and naming themselves as a resource, what makes it tokenizing? And yeah, Mick, that's my thing. Like, I definitely feel like there are some people who do tokenize BIPOC individuals, but like, one, you have to recognize that as a white person in particular, if you're trying to diversify your space, like, there's always going to be the chance that you are going to be viewed that way, and you have to respect that. Because why didn't you have a diverse space in the first place? So yeah, automatically people are not going to trust you. Like, that's just a given. But so many people are worried about tokenizing, and it feels weird. I agree. I think Amphibious was a tokenizing thing. I think that the way that they did things, and you can tell when it's tokenization by how they talk about people, how they talk about BIPOC. BIPOC BIPOC is a label, and I tweeted about this the other day. BIPOC is a label that's in place to shorten having to list every single culture, ethnicity, and race of color. That is what BIPOC is for. You don't get to say my team is 50% BIPOC. That doesn't even make sense. What do you mean your team? That tells me nothing. if you tell me your team is 50% BIPOC and therefore is a diverse space, what if everybody in the 50% BIPOC is black? Then that's not a diverse space. So what does that even mean? So when people start whipping out the statistics and they pull out their protractors and calculate the trajectory of how many black people they're gonna have on their team, that's when I think it's tokenizing. But if you're just simply inviting people of color into your space, I don't feel like that's tokenizing. That makes sense, Ismail. I think that's, at least to me, I don't know if that's really tokenizing. Like, particularly the second part, relying on people of color as your personal Google, I don't think that's really tokenizing. Hey Uni, how are you? No, because that's when I'm like, okay, like now it's getting weird. I don't know. Let me just look up. Let me see what Google says tokenizing means. Mick, please! Not another gifted sub. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the gifted sub to Uni. It says the practice of making only a perfunctory or symbolic effort to be inclusive of members of minority groups, to give the appearance of racial or gender equality. So yeah, I don't know if that second part is really tokenizing versus objectifying, which I feel like are a little bit different. I know we're kind of getting off topic, but nobody's asking those questions. I know, right? No one's really asking questions related to the topic, so I feel we can kind of expand it a little bit more. Yeah, Quirky. Quirky says, as a white person, for white people, I see them hiding behind, oh, I don't want to tokenize black people, so then they never have to reach out and be shut down. They don't have to be made uncomfortable. They don't have to listen to anger if they never reach out. And that takes me to... No, that's fine. That's fine, Ismera. That takes me to my next point is that if you are afraid, right? If you are afraid of being rejected, then I don't know that you've actually decentered yourself. Like, if you are that scared of being viewed a certain way, if you are that scared, I'm not saying that this is you, Ismera, but if you are that afraid of this, if you are that afraid of being viewed like as racist or being viewed as someone who tokenizes BIPOC, then that means that you haven't finished the work yet. Does that make sense?
Multi-cannon.
Well, we're about 2 hours into the conversation. We are 2 hours into the conversation. I think this is a great chat. I don't know that I'm a little bit disappointed, I guess, that more white people didn't show up. And I know I said this last time we did our chat. Like, I know that there are a lot of you who are in chat who are white, and I am glad that y'all showed up for both of these events. I recognize some of your names from the last event, but I really wish that like more white trans people would show up to these, more white people in general would show up to these events, because I feel like y'all would be able to get opinions from and get the lived experiences from people of color in your communities and actually learn to be more inclusive. I don't know how to better, I know that personally I'm a more abrasive activist. Like, I've even been called an aggressive activist in some spaces. And I know that it's a little bit scary, I guess, because I've had people tell me that they're scared of how I'll respond to them in these conversations because of how I call people out. But like, again, if that's your fear, if you are that scared, then you are not ready for this conversation to begin with, and you need to say that out loud because people need to know that you have not yet decentered yourself. Yeah, definitely. Let me change my title. Oh no, I guess I can leave it the same. Lala! I hope you're doing well. Yeah, I don't think that it's, I wouldn't say that that's you, Ismera. I feel like you I feel like you and a lot of my other like white friends do a really good job of, I don't think validating how I feel is the right word, but I don't know another word to explain it. Y'all listen to me and take what I say very, very seriously, and that helps me to understand that it's not me who is aggressive. And it's unfortunate that like I have to think that way, that I have to, that I'm always self-conscious of coming across as aggressive and abrasive and stuff like that, and it's something that I'm unlearning myself. But it helps when like white people in particular in these spaces come back, because it tells me I'm not abrasive, I'm just speaking how I feel, and how I'm doing it is okay. Again, I hate that I have to do that, but it is. It's something that I have to do to help myself feel better about how I communicate as an autistic person with anxiety. No, thank you, thank you. And that's how I feel, but again, like when you have so many people, like over the past, I think 3 months, I've had so many white people like tell me that I'm aggressive, and it does kind of suck sometimes. For the most part, I try not to care, but it does suck. Like, it sucks. There's two things that really suck for me in my interactions with white people. It's when they call me aggressive, or when they disagree with my lived experience. Both of those things make me very uncomfortable, because what about me is aggressive, but also on the other hand, what about me makes you think that you have any right to tell me your opinion on my lived experience? Those are two things that make me feel very uncomfortable. But Uni, what was something that you want to talk about as far as the tokenization topic? What was something that you want to talk about? Thank you, Mick. That makes me like it also helps. I know I highlighted like the white people that tell me things, but sense of community is very important for me, and I'm so grateful to have gotten really far into like the black side of Twitch, particularly the black activist side of Twitch, and like all of my gender non-conforming, non-binary, transgender pals. Y'all are holding me together. Y'all are holding me together. I want you to know that. Y'all are the glue for my you are the glue to my soul and my spirit. Also, thank you for the compliment, Lala. I did a face mask before before stream. Hey, Shireen. Please, I will start crying. I'm already tearing up, y'all. Please. Yeah, I think that I wish that we could truly. I wish that we could be more angry. Like I wish that I wasn't the only one. I wish that like people affected by marginalization weren't the only ones who are angry. I really do wish that. Like I think everyone should be angry. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. I'm trying not to get emotional. Yeah, I agree, Lala. I think there's a difference between like I feel like anger is not even a bad thing. Like I feel like anger is really not a bad thing. I think more gets done when people are angry than when people are just definitely things get done more when people are angry than neutral. Yeah, I think that's part of why I am sometimes comfortable. Like there's some spaces when I'm having conversations in like predominantly black spaces and stuff like that, and we have conversations about anger. I view anger a lot differently. Like anger doesn't feel like a dirty word, but in white predominated spaces, non-black predominated spaces, it feels like anger feels like a bad word. Well, thank you. Shireen, your comment highlights what we had a conversation with in the beginning. If you're gonna highlight your marginalized identities and this is your first time trying to contribute to this conversation, I'd really appreciate if you also mention that you're white, because again, when you are quick to say things like I'm trans or I'm marginalized in my sexuality, my gender, my religion and things like that, and you don't highlight that you're white, it can make people feel differently about what you're saying. Like if I knew that you were black and you were saying that, how you feel would come across a lot differently to me than if you are white. Thank you, I appreciate it. It's just it's part of what we learned last stream about the Hayes addressing framework, and learning to recognize your marginalized identities as much as you highlight your, or learning to recognize and highlight your privileged identities as much as you do your marginalized identities, really helps to increase your intersectional viewpoint. Like it will really help you as an advocate, as an ally, as a person contributing to advocacy and allyship, however you want to phrase it, it really helps to recognize all of your privilege and marginalization. And that's fair. I'd look at you a little funny, Shireen, if you came in here saying you were proud to be white. Let me close my window, y'all. Give me a second.